again, everyone. It's good to have you with us for this event.
Athletes, huddle up. It's time to begin. Get focused. Let's go.
Athletes, take your mark. Get set. It's time for the Addictive Athlete podcast. Hey, everybody out there, Coach Blue Robinson here. I want to thank you all so much for downloading, sharing, and subscribing to the podcast. Greatly appreciate you guys doing so. Really do appreciate you jumping on, leaving a review too. It does help get this podcast out a little bit further and into the ears of those who might need a little team support in their path to recovery. As always, I want to turn your attention to our website, addictoathlete.org. You'll find all kinds of content from how the team is structured, how to join Team Addictive Athlete, how to become a certified coach for Team Addictive Athlete, all that and then some. Addictoathlete.org is a one-stop shop for everything team-oriented. Hey, as always, I want to let you all know that right now our Project ELF, our Sub for Santa program, is open for you to jump on and nominate someone that may have fallen on some hard times, may need a little help. This is something Addictive Athlete kind of fundraises for all year so that we can give back to some folks that may have fallen on hard times. So please don't hesitate. We want to get you guys in as fast as possible so that we can guarantee a spot. But you can jump on there on addictoathlete.org and contact Marissa, or jump on any of our socials and just let us know and we can contact you. Don't be shy. That's what it's there for. Athletes, got a great guest today, one that I was privileged to be on his podcast, and just really am enamored with the work that he's been doing in the world of recovery. I'm going to call him a titan in the industry because he's got a lot of influence and a powerful story and message. And it was an honor to be on his podcast. And so I kind of suckered him into being on ours, I think. I don't know. But I'm happy to have Todd Sylvester in the studio today. For those of you guys that may know, he's got a great podcast, the Beliefcast. It's a fantastic podcast, very inspiring, very motivating, and he's got a deep reservoir of guests. And so, Todd, welcome to the podcast. I feel like an amateur speaking to you because of just how strong your background is with this kind of stuff. But I do appreciate you taking some time out. Would you mind introducing yourself to Team Addictive Athlete, because you're a man that I'm sure they're going to want to dial into.
Yeah, well, thank you, Blue, for having me on. I think the world of you as well and all the good you're doing. And for your team that's tuning in and listening into this, thank you for being here. And I hope I can share a few things that will add to all the great things you're doing with the Addict Athlete already. And if I can add to that a little bit, wonderful. And we can connect together and be stronger because of that. And my background is I call myself a mental fitness coach. I've been doing that for 34 years. And I'm also a counselor at Wasatch Recovery Treatment Center. I've been a counselor here for coming up on 9 years. And I do speaking events all over the world. I've written a few books. And like you mentioned, I have a podcast. And it all stems from going through hell, honestly, and overcoming it, like many of you listening to this, and including your story, Blue. And it's, I always believe that life happens for us. And when I watch, my life unfold, I look back and go, I wouldn't change a thing. So I'm grateful to be alive, grateful to be here with all of you. I'm married. I have 4 children. I have 2 grandchildren. And I just, again, it's an honor to be able to share a portion of my story with you guys today, and hopefully some things that will benefit all of us.
Oh man, I'm sure it will. And it is wild when your kids start growing up and having kids of their own. It's like, wow, this is really working.
Yeah,
like,
right.
How'd this happen? Yeah, I love it. But Todd, you have a powerful story. And like I said, after being a guest on your show, unexpectedly, I received a package in the mail with your book. And I'm one of those guys that reads more for like research and stuff, but I turned the first page and I didn't stop, brother.
Wow.
This is the first time in a long time that I sat and did it in one sitting. And I was taken by it because of the reality and how close the stories and the components and the sub factors kind of felt with my own life. And so we're going to put links to that on the show description, but jump into this a little bit, because you did on the outside, like most, you would have had kind of the all-American experience.
Yeah.
You did have an interesting kind of battle, I think, kind of being a we'll call it like an independent family in a very traditionally Mormon community.
Yep.
But the way you navigated this and the way that your addiction kind of grew just kind of out of like maybe some unexpected manners, I'm kind of blown away by it. Would you share a little bit about what kickstarted it, because I really want to focus on your pivot and then really like
Sure.
what you've done with it. But give a little background to the listeners.
Yeah, you bet. I grew up in a very loving home. I knew my parents loved me. We played sports. That was my religion. I played every sport
Mm-hmm.
growing up. And, you know, on the grand scheme of things, my life was really good. Every family has problems. Every family has dysfunction. And we had that too. And
Yeah.
we never talked about big issues or big problems. We never talked about drugs or alcohol or, my mom at one point got addicted to opiates and my dad was a drinker. I just kind of grew up around this. It just seemed like normal because I didn't know any different, honestly. So whether my parents knew it or not, I was being taught by them just by watching them and kind of what they do in their lives. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I remember one time my brother and I, when we were younger, I think I was like 11, my brother was 9. And, both my parents worked. I took a sip of I think it was a bottle of vodka that my dad had in his wet bar in the basement. And I didn't get drunk or anything, but I kind of fell in love with the rush of, oh, I know I'm doing something wrong here, but there was something about
Mm-hmm.
it. And then by the time I was 13, I had discovered marijuana and just fell in love with it, honestly. And that just kind of opened up this door to everything else. I had this all or nothing mentality growing up, which can be a really
Yeah.
good thing, Blue, right? If it's focused in the right direction. And
Yeah.
but it can be very destructive as well. And I kind of had these polar opposite lives. I wanted to be a college basketball player, but at the same time I loved partying and doing drugs and things like that. And so obviously eventually the drugs and the alcohol caught up to me, and things got really, really bad. But yeah, it just started off kind of an innocent thing, like I want to try this out, and just that kind of fell in love with it, like I said. And I know a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people get started that way when we're younger. We just kind of like, oh, and then you want to fit in with your friends and your crowd. And I got a lot of acceptance from my friends by doing those things, and it kind of fed my ego. And so I just bought into
Yeah.
the whole thing, and I'm like, man, I'm going to do this the rest of my life. And at the time when you're younger, you think you're invincible and you can do anything, kind of thing. So,
True.
but that's how it started. It
True.
was a really simple, I mean, innocent is a better word, way of getting started, but turned out to be one of the hardest things I've ever gone through in my life. And luckily to be alive through all that and to be talking to you today, honestly.
Yeah. It's a miracle in and of itself.
Yeah.
In your book, you pointed out a lot of, I'm going to call them mentors, these people that were kind of positioned in life at very critical and interesting points in your experience. I listened to, I read about your coach and how he's kind of like, what's kind of going on? You had a few coaches
Yeah.
that kind of had that inclination that something was up.
Yeah.
But again, you think that you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof,
Yeah.
and until we're faced with something that we decide it's done, we just keep trying to move forward. But I'm curious, man, because when you started moving into like adulthood and you lost some pretty, I'm going to say some pretty precious things, scholarships and all kinds of stuff,
Yeah.
and all the stuff that comes with that. I'm curious that shift that most of us have to make, where we allow people to mentor us.
Yeah.
You talk about a bishop. I mean, for those that listening, you talk about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the spirituality and components that come to that, and a bishop that really wasn't even your bishop taking you under his wing. And I think when you went through that, it was at an interesting time. I mean, I'm thinking,
Yeah.
that was a time where there was still a lot of like, who's this kid? But this man
Yeah.
really kind of like extended his reach to you, and
Yeah.
you took it. I'm so curious about your thoughts on these mentors, these people that when we allow them in, that the magnitude of change that can occur.
Yeah. No, great question and a great setup there. I get emotional. I'm even getting emotional right now as you were talking about
Yeah.
the way you put that together. I didn't, hindsight's always 2020, and a lot of times you don't even realize what's going on when you're in the moment.
Yeah.
But I didn't grow up religious. For those listening, I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe any of that stuff. And
Me either.
and when this bishop took me under his wing, it wasn't that, oh, I want to start going to church or being religious. It was more of, here's one guy that's willing to actually meet with me every week and help me through some really difficult things. And this was before there was a rehab on every street corner. There weren't programs like
Yeah.
Addict to Athlete back then. There was nothing really, honestly.
Mm-mm.
There's no resources. There was no internet. And so this was like one of those, yeah, like you said, a mentor that just he believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And looking back on it now, this guy became my rehab. I
Yeah.
met with him every week for a year and a half. And at the same time, I had another friend of mine named Rich Saunders, who I played basketball with. He was also one of those mentors. I say this often, Blue, that,
Mm-hmm.
if I've been able to see a little further than others, it's because I'm standing on shoulders of giants. And these
Yeah.
mentors are giants in my life, and they let me stand on their shoulders.
Yeah. I'm with you.
And just by you bringing that up, Blue, it's like I even take it for granted now, like what the influence these guys had in my life. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't typically get emotional talking about them, but
Yeah.
if it wasn't for them, I honestly wouldn't be here. I probably would have died. I probably wouldn't, or something, else. But thankfully, these guys took me under their wing. And it's one of those things where it's like when someone believes in you when you don't even believe in yourself, and it gives you a
Yeah.
little bit of hope in those moments, like, okay, maybe there is something to me that's worthy of being alive and worthy of making a difference. And that's really
Mm-hmm.
what it ended up being, is these giants, these mentors in my life started to make me believe in myself. If I could go back a little bit, when I was a
Yeah.
sophomore in high school at Brighton High School, my sophomore basketball coach, his name was Coach Larry Wall. And this guy believed in me on a level that I would leave practice sometimes going, I can't believe how much the coach believes in me. It was like,
Yeah.
wow. And what was interesting too at the time for basketball, I wanted to live up to those expectations, man. And it just really fueled my confidence in basketball. That's when my basketball really went from, yeah, I was okay basketball player, to like, man, I was probably one of the best on the team. And it was,
Mm-hmm.
again, because this coach, this mentor, Larry Wall, believed in me when maybe so much, as a kid, you're struggling believing in yourself. So mentors were
Yeah.
a huge part of the transition, the transformation in my life. And I'm
Jeez.
grateful to this day for them. And I still have some of these same mentors in my life that are still helping me today. So
Yeah. You do. You bring up your buddy. Was it Rich? Is that what you said?
yeah, Rich. Yep.
To me, when I read about that that part in there, I was blown away, because that is a friend that does something that not a lot of friends do, and that's
Yeah.
willing to sacrifice a relationship for the hope of something of greater value. Like his whole approach, you
Yeah.
know, when you're in active addiction, one of the last things you want to do is feel anything spiritual. You want to kind of be like, come on. And so
Yeah.
as I'm reading this and listening to your buddy kind of approach you kind of on this, like, I know you may not believe this, but I feel as though I need to be here for you. And this is why.
Yeah.
That is an incredible risk to take, because you could have just turned that thing around and been like, dude, what? Like, because if I remember right, he'd been gone and you guys kind of just reacquainted yourself, kind of like,
Yeah.
impartially. And then for that, I'm thinking you had to have been in a mindset too, to be like, okay, this is so kind of out in left field that
Mhm.
there's got to be something to this. I'm curious
Yeah.
what you thought of that on a deeper level of like, what is he talking about? Because when that was approached to me, when a mentor of mine did almost the same thing, he was a bishop and I didn't know what that was,
Yeah. Yeah.
it kind of suckered me into listening to him through friendship and I got it.
Mhm.
But I was kind of blown away that a friend would extend himself like that and that you would receive it. Like, I'm curious what you thought of that.
Yeah. That's another great question, Blue. You know, again, when you're at the bottom of the barrel, if you will, rock bottom, if you think, you feel like you're at rock bottom, you could probably always go a little further. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, but I felt at rock bottom. I had lost my scholarship that I had practiced so hard for since I was a young kid. And, that was my identity back then. Like basketball was that's who I was. That's what I wanted to be. And when I made, I mean, I have to take accountability. That was my actions that led up to me losing that. I just felt like I'm the worst human being on the planet, and I'd rather just not be here if I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to play basketball. And so when I was at the depths of hell, if you will, that's when I get this phone call from my friend Rich Saunders, who we hadn't talked to since high school, and he was one of those good kids who really was one of those guys that he's not afraid to talk to anyone and tell you anything. Like he's really
Brilliant.
straightforward. Even back in high school, I mean, a lot of kids are, in high school don't seem like they have a lot of confidence. Rich was a little opposite of that. He seemed like, man, how does this guy so confident all the time?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, when he reached out to me, and I always like to point out to your listeners that um, there weren't cell phones back then. So, I mean, like you had the phone on the wall, right? And, and to try to track someone's number down and this and that. And since we had lost contact for so long, to get a phone call from him years later after high school was like surprising and shocking. But at the same time, it was almost like I was in such despair. I was like, man, oh, this friend wants to talk to me. I'm in. I want to go talk.
Yeah.
And for him to basically say he felt prompted, by a higher power, God, if you will, for those listening, that I needed to turn my life around and start doing what maybe my God or higher power would want me to do. And he's telling me this even in those moments when I didn't even believe in God. and
Mm-hmm.
and I thought, man, is there a God, and would God accept me? Would a higher power even care about me? Who am I? Kind of
Yeah.
thing. And so it was just so surreal, Blue. I don't even know how to say it. It's like to this day I still get a little blown away. Like, how did that happen for me? And I
Mm-hmm.
remember one time I had a lady. I was speaking at a big ladies event. There was like 600 women in the crowd, and I was sharing my story. And at the end, one of the ladies in the very back, she was crying, and she said one of the hardest questions I've ever been asked in my entire life in front of 600 people. She said, why did you live and my son died? And
Ooh.
I literally was like, and instantly in my head I'm going, what do I say to that? How do you even answer that kind of a question?
Yeah.
And what I came up with in the moment, which I felt was a little bit of inspiration, was, you know what, I don't have an answer for that. It's not fair that I'm here and your son passed away, but I am here, and that's why I'm speaking today, because I feel like I have a responsibility. If I can get through this, maybe there was a reason why, that I need to be someone who is now a mouthpiece to make a difference in people who are maybe where I once was, they are now, kind of thing.
Mm. Yeah, that would be a very challenging question, and you can just probably feel the heartfelt, like desire to want to know, because really, when you boil it down, you were one and the same, and who's to say? But I think you taken your friend's advice, and then obviously it wasn't just all right, I'm getting on the highway of life now. There's still some rocky roads.
Oh yeah,
It was a seed that was planted, Todd, and
yeah,
I love that, man, because when people approach me, and you were probably a lot like me, like there's not a lot of people knew how deep I really was, and I'm sure
yeah,
it's the same with you, but when all is said and done and this pivot point begins to happen and this change of heart, maybe this decision to be, done with that chapter, it's
yeah,
curious because now you got to reinvent yourself, and that's kind of a hard thing too, because all you know is all this. I'm curious, as you started making those changes, um it obviously it's pretty lonely, but eventually
yeah,
you found someone, and I'm curious, when you met your wife, I'm
yeah,
curious, how did you go about opening up that, like, well, let me tell you a little bit about me, and because I know how it was for me and my wife, and she's never
yeah,
had an issue with any substances,
yeah,
and I'm like, let me tell you how dark this stuff got. And I tested the water to make sure she didn't panic and run, but she's like, I'm in. Like, to
yeah,
have someone that knows all the good about you and all the
yeah,
bad about you and have it be okay,
yeah.
that's mind boggling, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, my wife has never had an issue with substance abuse or addiction and at all. And so, I, what kind of gave me maybe a leg up with her, so to speak, was before I met her, I wanted to give back and make a difference in this world and help kids, especially. And so I had
Hmm.
created a drug education program in elementary schools. It was called Sly Dog Drug Free That's Me. And I would go around with this animated cartoon character, and I would share my story to all these kids in elementary schools in the state of Utah. I did that for 5 years. I spoke to over 350,000
I've
kids.
heard of that program. I didn't know that was you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was me. Yeah. And so my wife, before she was my wife, had heard. She knew my little brother. She knew my reputation as a partier, a druggie, an alcoholic, and so we typically get a reputation because we're doing something wrong, right? And then we
Yeah.
build character by doing the right thing. But she had this version of me because she had heard from just everyone else. Oh yeah, Todd, Sean's older brother Todd, he's crazy. He's this, and this. So she had this perception of me, but then she hears that I'm doing these drug education programs in elementary schools. And
Mm-hmm.
then we meet at a dance up at Snowbird of all
Nice.
places. And she was honestly very curious. Like, how do you go from this guy who's partying and doing drugs and drinking all the time to you're now talking to kids about staying away from drugs? Like, how? So it kind of helped me like get a date with her, honestly.
Yeah.
and 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 at that point, Blue, thankfully my mentor, Rich, had
Mm-hmm.
taught me the power of sharing your story.
Yeah.
If it's the old saying, if you don't own your story, it owns you. And he taught
Mm-hmm.
me the power and just owning what you've done. And so that just helped me. I had a lot of help pushing me to say, like with my wife, even, um, be vulnerable with her. And I did. And I shared, here's been my struggles and here's my battle, but here's what I'm doing now. And here's what I'm trying to continually do. And luckily, yeah, she like your wife, Blue, she accepted the good and the bad and saw that I was on
Mm-hmm.
a better path. And it was just awesome from day one. And she never once judged me in a negative way, and just thought, because everyone has their struggles. Even if you're not an addict,
Mm-hmm.
we all know what it's like to feel lonely. We all know what it's like to feel less than. We all know what it's like to feel maybe left out of a group or that kind of thing. So we all can connect on that level. And so that's where we connected. And
I
we've
love
been
it.
married now 31 years, and we got, two
Amazing.
grandkids now.
Amazing.
Yeah,
I love it. And it's such a crucial thing. And I've gotten this from some folks that have inquired about my relationship, and it sounds like yours is a lot like mine.
yeah,
And it's like if you have a counselor that's never had addiction issues, like they
yeah,
think, well, that counselor can't help me. They don't know what I'm going through. I'm like, yeah, they
yeah,
can. In fact, probably even more than me, because I chose the same dumb things you did. They had the same experiences, but chose not to use. So
right,
really, they probably got more in the bank account than we have. And I
right.
find that to be true. I realized that no matter what, no matter how bad things got, no matter how much of the past wanted to bubble up, I could never justify, going back to it, because
Yeah,
like she endured it. And I,
yeah,
and I love
right.
that concept, don't you? Like, just to know, like, there's
Totally.
no excuse now, huh?
Yeah, there's no excuse. And yeah, and you're right. We all can understand each other. I don't have. I hear this a lot with my clients. Like, I need to
Hmm.
date someone who's in recovery, and I always ask why. Well, I need them to understand me, and I'm like, and that's when I go back to, no, you don't. I mean, if that works out, great, wonderful. But you don't have to like
Hmm.
say that's the only way, because you can date someone who's never been there. Because again, we all have felt lonely. We've all felt not enough. We've all felt left out. That's where we can connect. At the end of the day, that's where it's at. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, then give me some advice, because there's a lot of listeners we have on the team
yeah,
that are in situations where now they're trying to build relationships and have these kind of things. And there is that mindset that I'm broken, that I'm damaged property. Who would want someone that's, had the experiences and the problems that I've had?
whoa,
When you bump into this, I'm
yeah,
curious, because again, your mentors and your friends, they looked at you and said, there's power in your story. There's something
yeah,
inspiring in there if you'll talk about it. How do you go about sharing with people to say, it doesn't just have to be a romantic partner. It could be a new friendship, a new relationship. It could be a relationship with a boss or employee. Like,
yeah.
there's a lot of value in folks that have come through the trenches. How do you teach that?
Wow, great question. And I get excited about this one because this is the
Hmm.
thing. I believe this to my very core, Blue,
Yeah.
that addiction is the wake up call to your greatness. And I'm
Oh, I
going to
love it.
repeat that for your listeners.
Please do.
Addiction is the wake up call to your greatness. Now, many
Hmm.
of the listeners might be saying, well, how is that even, what does that mean? I really
Yeah.
believe that when we're doing the wrong thing, which is, we're drinking, we're using drugs, we're manipulating, we're lying, we're, cheating, whatever it is, right? That's not who we are to our core. We weren't born drug addicts and alcoholics. We weren't born to go lie and cheat, steal, and manipulate. We learned all those behaviors, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Hmm.
why it doesn't feel good, because we go against who we really are. We're over here living this way, but when we're in line with who we are, then that's where the magic is. And so addiction's like almost like saying, slapping us in the head, going, hey, wake up. This is not you. This pain you're feeling, the reason why you're feeling pain, because this does not line up with your true, authentic self.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
in my office, and I remember you reading this, Blue, on my wall up above me
Mm-hmm.
when I have a client in here. I have a quote that says, "The most delightful surprise in life is to suddenly recognize there's nothing wrong with you." And
Yeah.
it's so funny when I have my clients on day one. I mean, they've been shooting meth and heroin for like 10 years. They've been in and out of prison, and they read this, and I'm not kidding you, Blue. 10 out of 10 times they start to cry. And I'll say,
Yeah.
"Have you ever had anyone, or have you ever heard that before?" And they're like, "Never." And I always preface, it doesn't mean you don't have stuff to work on. Obviously there's a lot to work on, but to
Yeah.
your core as a human being, your value, it's set, you're good. And when we can
Mm-hmm.
tap back into that, that's the goal, because the answers are in you. They're not coming from Todd, they're not coming
Yeah.
from Blue. The
Mm-hmm.
answer is when we tap into what's already built in our DNA. And so that's one of my, when I come up with, you know what, I'm broken and damaged and this person's going to see me that way. Well, we first have to dispel that lie. You're not broken and damaged. You've had problems, you've
Mm-hmm.
struggled, but it doesn't mean you're broken and damaged, because if that's the barometer, how we measure ourselves, then we're all broken and damaged, right?
Absolutely.
So narrative is powerful. What we say to ourselves, words have power, and so we got to be very careful there. And going back to what I said a minute ago, if we don't own our story, it really does own us. It controls us. It keeps us. It keeps us, playing small, if you will. You know what?
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I owned my story, I felt worthy to not only date my wife, future wife, but to marry and to say I deserve a woman who's good and strong and powerful. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
whereas a lot of times I think, well, if I'm broken, then I need to date someone and marry someone who's broken too, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's,
And that
that's
never
kind of the way
works.
I look at it.
Hmm. I love it because what you're saying too, listeners, I really want you to pay attention to is that your language does really hold a lot of value. And 2011, when I first started Addict to Athlete, I didn't want to call them addicts anymore. Like, you're not
Right.
an addict; it's a
Love it.
part of you. You're not an alcoholic; it's a part of
Yeah.
you. And brother, did we get some blowback on that just because it was traditional speech,
Yeah.
right? It's traditional language.
Yeah.
And I understand the principle behind it. I think it's fantastic. But for
Sure.
how long? I mean, that's why we chose addict to athlete, Roman numeral, right? Because
Yeah.
in the Roman numeral system, they don't identify zero. So you're never less
Love
than
it.
just you. Anything beyond that is a building platform. And people
Love
had
it.
a real hard time with that.
Yeah.
Why do you believe it is so hard for them to see there's more inside of me than just this attribute, this negative attribute?
Well,
Even if it's in a context where you think it's great, it still holds a negative mindset, doesn't it?
yeah. Well, it's built into the culture. I mean, the
Yeah.
culture of recovery, in many ways, in my opinion, they have it wrong, and it,
Yeah.
it really does cause these belief systems that run deep and deep. And it's in the school system, it's in our neighborhoods, it's in
Hmm.
treatment centers, it's everywhere, that somehow we're broken and damaged, and we're always going to have to deal with this kind of thing. It doesn't. And again, I agree with you. There's great principles there, but at the same time, if words have power, which everyone seems to agree on, if words
Yeah.
matter, then what we say is going to make an impact in my life. Like, the truth is, I used to be an alcoholic. I'm not today. I used to
Hmm.
be. And that's a fact. I don't
Yeah.
deny that. And I'm not going to go hang out at the bar tonight because I know that that's not my life anymore. And
Yeah.
that's why I love what your philosophy, that addict to athlete. I mean,
Hmm.
I love that. I mean, remember that quote I had you read about this, become
Yes.
a spiritual athlete, how powerful that
Hmm.
was? Like,
Yeah.
that's really what you're doing is, I mean, again, it's about the greatness piece. That's really what you're saying is, man, you maybe once were an addict, but you're now an athlete. And what is an athlete? An athlete's strong. An athlete has confidence. An athlete, walks tall. An athlete helps the person who's downtrodden. I mean,
Hmm.
there's so many things that feed into that. So
Yeah.
again, words matter. Words are powerful. We got to be very careful. And again, not denying that we had issues in the past and we still have some now, but maybe not the substance abuse and the addiction piece. But we're still working on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been clean 34 years. I'm still working on me, you
Yeah.
know. But I don't walk
Hmm.
around telling myself I'm broken and I'm an addict and I've got a disease and I'm never going to make it. And no, I'm living my life and I'm spending time with my family and raising my kids, my grandkids, and I'm doing podcasts like this to work. If we can help people change their mindset around this concept of being broken. I mean, that's huge, and that will serve
Yeah.
you so well in life if you can do that.
Absolutely, and I think it's in the name of your podcast, the Beliefcast, right?
Nice.
Change your beliefs.
Yep.
How hard is it for
Yeah.
people to really change their belief system, right? I mean, like, wait a minute, I've been told that I'm powerless. I've been told that I'm an addict, and it's
Yep.
like, yeah, but for how long? The powerlessness ended the moment you had the energy, the
Yep.
push to walk through that door. I mean, look at what power that is, right? How do you help
Yeah.
people tap into that?
Yeah. Well, you just said it perfectly. I mean, the truth is we're powerful, and
Yeah,
to be able to go, enough is enough. Like even in active addiction, you can still go, enough's enough. And what do? You reach out for help, or someone comes and offers help and you accept it. That's powerful.
that's power.
That is so much power in there. So that's
Hmm.
why yeah, you're powerful. And I give several examples of that. I mean, we could go down the list. I mean, you know, some of you look at your clients and you can go, man, look at this person, look what they overcame. I mean,
Yeah.
Blue, if we take your story, which I'm posting on
Yeah.
Monday, by the way, everyone better listen to it. But
Thank you.
your story proves, like, how did you go, like, it's funny nowadays we see on Instagram and social media that, oh, this person ran 100 miles and this person, did this boot camp for 6 weeks. And
Yeah.
again, that's hard and it's challenging and it's wonderful. But that's no more astonishing than someone like you, Blue, who overcame a mind altering substance abuse, addiction
Hmm.
that kept you stuck. I mean, you overcame that. That's like
Yeah.
running a 500-mile race and winning. I mean, I just think
Absolutely.
sometimes we forget how powerful it is when someone overcomes addiction, but yet the person who's overcome it, they almost forget that.
Hmm.
And
Exactly.
give
Yeah.
yourself a little bit of credit here. That
Yeah.
look what you've done. That's amazing.
Well, that's the thing. I wouldn't have even recognized that until I was going to school to become a substance abuse counselor,
Yeah,
University of Utah. And they made us get up and do this genogram thing, right?
yeah.
And I'm watching everybody do their genogram, which is kind of a breakdown of your family tree. And you can kind
Mhm.
of see where the cycle of addiction kind of takes hold.
Yeah.
And I got up and did mine, and I turned around, and people were like dumbfounded, and they're like, "What are you even doing here? Like,
Right.
you have every reason not to be here." And
Yeah.
I'm like, "I don't think I was anything special. I didn't think," but they were like, "There's no reason for you to be here. Like, you must have really wanted to fight for this." And I'm like, to us, it's just kind of our story, but we
Yeah.
don't realize we take a step back and allow someone else to maybe hear it and to be
Yeah.
like, "Wow." That is a big deal. But that's why I think most people keep it secret. That's again a reason why on Addict Athlete there's no anonymity. There's no, like keeping your story quiet. It's no, this
Yeah.
is powerful stuff. So I'm blown away that you'd be willing to even put it in a book, let alone kind of share it on your podcast and your
Yeah.
speaking engagements. Because really it's inspiring. And you're like me, the battle that we faced is going to inspire someone. All you have to do is share it. And so I'm curious because again, you hold yourself in a lot of different positions and people know who you are. As you cross the threshold now to move into a whole different realm, instead of just educating and teaching, now you're going direct one-on-one and you're counseling. Tell
Mhm.
me a little bit about that because I remember when I crossed the threshold from like, just being a courier working at a treatment center to all of a sudden now people are talking to me about some heavy stuff. I'm like, can I help them? Like, this is some heavy
Yeah.
stuff. Like, it's a wild privilege to have to be able to be a component in someone's recovery. Tell me
Yeah.
why you chose this path, Todd. I'm curious, like what motivated you to want to get in there because it's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. And I'll tell you what motivated me was this, and I'm going to sum it up with this quote that one of my clients a few years ago mentioned to me, and I put it to memory because it was
Hmm.
so profound. And here's what he said: I tried to find myself I could not see. I tried to find my God eluded me. I tried to find my brother, I found all three. And I thought, wow, there it is. Because see, if it wasn't for these mentors and my friend Rich and these people reaching out and helping me and believing in me when I didn't believe in myself, I would not be here. And
Yeah.
it's almost like I would feel like ungrateful, I guess is the word. Like there's probably a more deeper, powerful word. If I wasn't now doing that for someone else, and there is so much power in helping others. I often will say this, that if you master the first 11 steps of AA, you'll probably drink again. If you master step 12, you'll never touch another drop. And what
There you go.
step 12 is, reaching back out and helping someone who's gone down that same road that you're on, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, I never feel more alive when I'm helping someone else. I never feel more connected when I'm helping someone else. It's just like, I almost feel like this is what we're all meant to do. Is I think we go through trials so we can be in a position to help someone else. I think that's the whole purpose of why we go through it,
Yeah.
to be honest. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and then I've also learned this, that everyone has the answers in them. My job is to get them to see it. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
fix anybody. I don't. It's not my job to fix anyone. As a matter of fact, it's impossible for me to fix anyone. But my job is to help them see the power and the beauty and the strength and all that they already possess. They just need to learn how to tap back into that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really what I try to help them do, is to see that. And so I just love it.
Mm.
I don't know. I just love it. I mean, I see
Yeah.
anywhere from 8 to 10 clients every single day. And it's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
At times it is taxing and draining, but more often than not, it's actually exhilarating, and I feel amazing.
Well, and that's something, listeners, that I want you all to know, that even if you don't have a mic and can't broadcast your thoughts and your desire to want to help, you can do that like with a sniper almost, to get
Yeah,
in there and to find people that you
yeah,
may not even realize simply by just
yeah,
talking to them. I
yeah,
think, again, in a world where we try to do so much stuff through digital media and texting and all this kind of stuff, we miss that visual thing. I was talking to one of my clients just recently who just sparked up a conversation with a guy that was standing in line waiting for to check out. Brief although it was, the guy noticed his shirt and said, "Hey, I've heard of that. Well, do you go to Addict Athlete?" And as a result of such, they've been in communication now for the last couple of weeks, and hopefully he's going to come show up one day. But
yeah,
it's that kind of stuff. It makes you a little bit more aware, because I'm a big believer that once you've experienced like the addiction issues and you've got some time under your belt, you can sense it in other people. I mean, everyone has someone that struggles.
yeah,
And so being
for
able to
sure.
be present and to, be ready, be like an ambassador of recovery, it's one of the
Yeah,
most amazing things.
yeah,
I'm sure you find yourself doing that quite a bit, just noticing the unnoticeable.
all the time. Yeah, I love that. One of the things I challenge a lot of my clients to do, especially these younger kids that I'm working with, I
Hmm.
have them go. One of the challenges is, go hold the door 15 minutes early at the main door at your high school, and pay a compliment to every kid walking through that. And
Oh man.
nine times out of 10, the kids look at me like, I can't do that. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, you can. It's just, yeah, it might be a little uncomfortable, but you can for sure do that. And you watch the miracle unfold if you'll do this. And
Mm.
when the clients go do that simple little act of holding the door, paying a compliment for these kids walking through, it's almost like, for lack of a better word, it becomes addicting. It's like, wow, I feel
For
amazing.
sure.
And the I always say this: you can hold a door for someone and pay them a compliment; it will save your life. I mean,
Yeah.
that's so simple, but yet so powerful.
I love it. I'm going to take
Simple
that.
little things
I'm
go.
going to steal that.
Yeah, please.
Well,
It's
because and
amazing.
I work with a lot of youth too, and it
Yeah,
to get them out of their comfort zone like that. I mean, I
yeah.
remember like you identity versus role confusion. You're like, you want me
Totally.
to do this? What? Like
Right.
they're gonna think I'm crazy. But not only will they save their life, chances are they might save the life of the person that they're opening the door for, because they're being seen, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's amazing. The simple
That's
little
a
thing.
great idea. It's a
Yeah.
great idea.
Yeah. Try it with your younger clients, and man, well, they'll report back, and it's like, it's life changing, man. It's so cool.
So for that aspect, then, because a big component of recovery is that, like, what step 12 promotes, which is
Yep.
service, which is kind of carrying the message.
Yeah.
How do you get those folks that don't really see where they fit in the cog of life to kind of step out of their comfort zone? I mean, what kind of challenges do you give them? Because again, you're that mentor in their life now, and some of them will take the advice, some of them won't.
Yep.
But the ones that do, like, what do you notice happens to them once they start to like literally feel like, we'll call it the measure of their creation, right? Like, wow, I did this.
Yeah. Well, there's a guy named Chris Williams. He has an amazing podcast. He's very popular. He's like, I think he's in the top 10 with podcasts out there in the world. But he shared a quote, and
Really?
he said, the magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding. And
Ah,
so, yeah, isn't that just, that's gold? It's like, wow,
mm-hmm.
it punches you right in the mouth with that.
Yeah.
And really, so those clients that are refusing, or, saying they can't do it, it's like, but they came to you, Blue, or they come to me. They're looking for magic in their life again. They're looking for that joy. Well, it's on the work you're avoiding. And if you'll
Yeah.
go and do this work, yes, it's uncomfortable. And yes, it's at times scary because you're just not used to doing this. Like, honestly, it's very vulnerable for a high school kid to go open the door and pay a compliment. That's a vulnerable
Oh
thing
yeah.
to do. But at the same time, that's what's the magic's on the other side of that task, if you will, or that service. And and so if I'm dealing with someone who doesn't want to do certain things, I always just challenge them, like, what do you want? Because we always end up doing what we want.
Yeah.
Right. And they look at me like, and I go, do you agree with that statement? And a lot of times they'll kind of argue that. And I said, no, the truth is we always do what we want.
Hmm.
And they're like, well, I, you say you want help, but your actions are saying you want something else. You
Exactly.
want to stay stuck. You want to stay in that bad behavior because it's comfortable. Let's be honest. It's
Hmm.
it's uncomfortable to change. So what do? We stay comfortable. We don't like it. So
Yeah.
that's kind of
Yeah.
how I approach that. I just kind of hit them with, do you want the magic or not? And if you want the magic, it's on the work you're avoiding.
I love it. I love it. I do have a question for you
Yeah.
that I find quite interesting. On Team Addict Athlete, we call a lot of the folks, they come here, they're the athletes, they're the people with the addictions. We have a lot of the muggles, right? The non-magic folks, the people that are their family members, right?
Yeah.
We have them come, and it's kind of a cool thing. But integrating back into a home, like, come into treatment, getting clean, getting sober, it's almost like you're going back now. You're a free agent, right? You're getting drafted onto this new home team, and you want to
Yeah.
protect your home court, right? Your home is your home court. You don't do anything dumb on the home court. You guys follow the rules. You play by the game by the way it was designed. How do you teach people to reintegrate back into a home, now having a whole new set of like skill sets and this, when the team may be a few steps behind, right? Because
Yeah.
I've noticed there's times when I've worked with people in a residential situation and they go home and all of a sudden they have thoughts and they have opinions and they have these beliefs, and they're kind of pitching these to people that may not be, at the level that they are at. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, I wanted you to stop using them, but I didn't really want you to have an opinion on this. Or, oh, now you're trying to play, center when and you were playing point guard before. I mean, how do you help people integrate back into that to where they realize that now you've got to teach? I mean, they're with you and they've learned some stuff, but you've had 24/7. They've had maybe 6 or 7 hours. How
Yeah.
do you reintegrate the home team?
Yeah. Great question. I first teach them while I'm working with them this mathematical universal fact that your family and loved ones will never trust you again on the level they once did.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you what, this is a tough one for people to accept.
Oh, I love
It
it
doesn't
though.
mean trust can't build, because it does. What it
Hmm.
means is they'll never trust you on the level they once did. So, like an
Yeah.
example would be, I've been clean and sober 5 years, right? I'm doing good. Life's good. I come home one day, I'm tired. I had a rough day. In the back of my family member's mind, my loved one, my spouse, my friend, my daughter, my son is going to go, oh, did dad drink today? Right? I'm clean. Everything's great. But
Mm-hmm.
yet they're going to still have this little bit of doubt. I haven't had a drink in 34 years. When I, my wife at times will still worry that I may have a drink. It's been
Yeah.
34 years,
Yeah.
and what I've learned from another mentor of mine, he taught me that you take ownership of that, because we teach the people around us how to treat us. We've taught them
Exactly.
that, at one time we were liars and manipulators, and we don't follow through with things. And then, even though we're doing really well in those areas, there's still that little bit of a doubt. If we'll just accept that, they still love us, right? They love
Oh
us.
yeah.
So
Oh
if we
yeah.
can accept that will eliminate, honestly, 9 out of 10 arguments right there. If you just go, hey, I understand why you think maybe I drank today even, but I'm just actually
Mm,
really tired, but I get why you are wrestling with that. Time plus
makes
behavior
sense.
equals trust.
Yeah.
And
I love
time,
that.
there's that time, man, it can be a long time. And we
It
have to
can.
accept that, right? And so,
We have to. We have to. I love that principle. That it's happened to me. I remember once I fully disclosed everything that was Blue Robinson to my fiance, because that mentor of mine said, "Hey, he's holding some stuff back. You might
yeah,
want to talk to him about this." And when she brought that to me, I'm like, "How dare that mentor?" I was so
right,
mad at him. But I would have never have said it if he hadn't have broke the bubble there. And I remember once it all came out, and she's like, "Well, I got to wrap my head around this because I thought one thing. This is really who you are." Like I remember her sister, little sister at this time, this is, circa 25 years ago now.
yeah,
She's like,
yeah,
"Oh, older brother and sister-in-law, they don't trust Blue." And I said, "I don't blame them. Kind of earned that." And dude, like I've been married now for 23 years, brother.
yeah,
And I know now that they love me, they support me, my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law. I know they do, but I still feel like I'm under the microscope with them. And okay with me, right? I'm totally fine with that. That
yeah,
acceptance of like I earned that title.
yeah,
That means when you're past the ball with seconds, in a family, like family home system, right? And you're past the ball, they may not want you to shoot. They may want you to pass it away. That doesn't mean they don't trust you with that, but like maybe they're like you might do something goofy, like do
yeah,
another pass. I love that concept, man. That's
yeah.
a big one. We have to accept that, don't we?
Well, yeah, and it's funny is we train the people around us not to trust us, then we resent them for not trusting us.
Yeah.
And resentment breeds rebellion. So we put
Mhm.
ourselves in this vicious cycle, and we're doing it. It's not them. Like we,
Exactly.
yeah. So if we can accept that and take full responsibility that, yep, I trained everyone not to trust me. Guess what? They're not going to trust you. Just own it. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of funny. Like they love you because they're still in your life. So you know what? Just go, yeah, I get why you don't trust me. I totally understand it. And if you'll just do that,
Absolutely.
you'll save yourself so much heartache and pain. The one
Oh
other thing I
yeah.
want to mention
Mhm.
about how reintegrating with the family, communication is huge. There's
Oh
this
yeah.
thing that I have, like if I have say a wife, who's in treatment with me, right? She's married, she's got
Mhm.
kids. And then when they get back to going back to their husband, right? She's done all this work and maybe they haven't. And, kids are wondering, is mom going to be okay? We do this thing. I call this thing the 10-minute miracle. And
Hmm.
what this is like husband and wife will sit down 5 days a week for 10 minutes. And you put your phones in another room. And so, for instance, the wife gets to go first. She gets 5 minutes to talk about her day. And then at the end of her 5 minutes, she can talk about any regrets, resentments, and appreciations,
Hmm.
right? And then when
Brilliant.
she's done, now the husband can talk. And by the way, when the other one's talking, the other one's got to just sit and listen. Even if they're bringing up resentments, you just sit and nod your head. Yep, I'm listening. I hear you. Then it's the husband's turn, and then he's got 5 minutes to talk about his day, and then he can bring up any regrets, resentments, and appreciations. Now, if a resentment's brought up, obviously you give the other person a chance at the end to be able to acknowledge and own the resentment, if you will. But you
Brilliant.
always end with appreciations, and then
Hmm.
I always challenge them when they're done with that 10 minutes, they stand up and they hug for 8 seconds, right? The 8 second hug we've all heard about how
Yeah.
powerful that is. Psychology 101 tells you your heart start to connect when you do that. And the average couple in the United States speaks 27 minutes to each other a week.
Oh man.
80% of that 27 minutes is surfacey stuff.
Yeah. Small talk.
So
Hmm.
if you did the 10-minute miracle 5 times a week, that's 50 minutes. You're almost doubling the national average, but yet you're also bringing up any resentments and regrets that don't fester. You're not pushing them down. You're not, you're addressing them and they're getting addressed in the moment. So that type of
Hmm.
communication, when someone gets reintegrated to their life with their family and friends and kids, I'm telling you what, that is
Man.
magic. That's why I call it a
Makes.
miracle, because it's a miracle what starts to happen.
Absolutely. Authentically, it is. I mean,
Yeah.
you're right. I mean, 50 minutes, just of unadulterated conversation about, you too, instead of the small talk.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing, which
Huge.
is wild. I mean, I have the luxury of being able to work with my wife here at Addict Athlete. She's
Nice.
our director. And so
Oh, awesome.
I love that. And people always ask me, they're like, man, I'd go crazy if my wife was working with me. I'm like, not me, man. We make a great team together. So,
I
and
love it.
that's why. That's why, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
have those conversations.
Yeah.
Brother, again, we could probably go on for hours and hours, but I know
Yeah.
you're busy too. Please tell the listeners how to find you, where to grab the books. Like, I would love for them to kind of follow what you're doing, because you're speaking amazing truths and you're teaching some great lessons. How do they find you?
Yeah. Thank you. Do you mind if I share that quote that you and I did on our
Yes,
podcast with you? Because I thought you and I really
absolutely.
connected with this, and I want your listeners to hear this quote, and then I'll tell how people
Please.
can. This is by James Allen, and I shared this quote with Blue when he was on my podcast, which, by the way, is going out on Monday, so make sure you listen.
Listen up.
um,
Yeah.
it's so profound, but I want to share this with your listeners. Listen to this. So powerful. When one has reached the lowest point of sorrow, when weak and exhausted and overcome with a sense of powerlessness, he cries to God for help, and there comes no answering comfort and no succor. Then, discovering the painlessness of sorrow and the insufficiency of prayer alone, he is ready to enter the path of self renunciation, ready to purify his heart, ready to practice self control, ready to become a spiritual athlete, and to develop that divine and invincible strength which is born of self mastery.
Man.
Man, that
Yeah.
just hits
I have
home.
that in my office.
Yeah, I love it. So thanks for letting me share that. Hope your listeners love that.
They will.
So I have a website which is toddinspires.com, where you can have all the connections to my social media, the podcast. It's called a Beliefcast. You can look it up on any podcast platform out there.
Yeah.
And my social handle is at TS Inspires on all social handles out there. So you can check me out on Instagram or Facebook, and
Brilliant.
LinkedIn. I'm on there as well. I really love LinkedIn a lot. So, but yeah, that
Yep.
would be the best way to reach out to me. And they can reach out to me with any questions or any thoughts or anything. That'd be great.
Absolutely. All of his contact information's on his website. We'll make sure it's linked to this podcast that you guys can get on there. He's got a link in there, so you have him come speak to you too. And how can you not be inspired talking to Todd Sylvester? Todd, thank you so much for being a guest today, brother. It's going to help inspire a lot of folks, and just appreciate your authentic viewpoints on really, racing and replacing, like we say here on Addict to
Yeah.
Athlete. So thank you.
Oh, hey, it's my honor to be on your show. I love what you're doing. I've followed you for years, and I love your approach. And it's an honor to really
Thank you.
connect with you, Blue. And I'm glad that we know each other now.
Means a lot coming from you. Athletes, you've been well fed. Please continue to do all that you can to help inspire others to do the same. We'd love for you to check out the website, addictiveathlete.org. It's all in the pursuits of helping you turn your mess into your message.